So I decided to get Shadowrun a couple years ago to get into it and see what it was all about. I'd played a game of it years ago, and I thought it was pretty cool. And I looked online, and the grognarded me, and a lot of other people said 3rd edition was the way to go, especially if you still want to do kind of the older edition of it, like 1st and 2nd, and then the kind of the cleaned up version of 2nd being 3rd edition. Now, I don't know a whole bunch about Shadowrun when it comes to like the meta plot and stuff like that, because it's quite huge. I bought a bunch of 3rd edition. It was fairly cheap. I got it on eBay and Amazon and stuff like that. And I picked up the book, actually several copies of the book. And what I want to do is just kind of talk to you about the game a little bit in a bit of an old school view of it, as well as kind of a modern take on it. Now, I don't know anything about the newest edition, like the 6th edition. I know it was kind of panned by a lot of people as being pretty crap. But I still wanted kind of the older version of the game, and because I like older RPGs, obviously, if you've looked at my channel here, you know I like older RPGs. And so I chose 3rd edition. I like the way it looked. A lot of good feedback about it. And so that's what I picked up. And I got a bunch of books about it, pretty much almost every single 3rd edition book. And what I want to do is just kind of explain a little bit about what is currently going on with me in this game and expectations about this game. So it's not gonna be like one of my normal videos. I'm just gonna have a little rap session here, and maybe if this is a game that you're looking forward to getting, you can check it out. It is you can get the PDF on Drive-Thru RPG. I'll have a link down in the description, but stupid Catalyst they won't do it for POD. Yeah, you can't do print on demand. So it's only PDF, which is absolutely ridiculous. But they're trying to push everybody to their ridiculous amount of books they've made for 6th edition. Even though, of course, it's not well liked by a lot of people. But, of course, like anything, it'll have its fans. But, so I ran in the first kind of little easy food fight adventure for my group of players. And I want to just kind of tell you about this game because it's very interesting in the fact that I see it as pretty much one of the most complicated role-playing games I've ever ran. Now, I understand. There are people out there that think this game is easy, it's easy to run, that I'm stupid, that it was so easy for you, and, that's just how it is. It's the internet. Doesn't matter how hard a video game is, there's always somebody that did it pretty much blindfolded, like submerged in a vat of water, like with their hands tied behind their back. They're so good at everything. But for me, this is a difficult game. It's very complex compared to what I'm used to. Now, another game that I'm kind of used to is Vampire. And it uses a dice pool system, much the way that Shadowrun 3rd edition does. And 1st and 2nd and in all the editions. But Shadowrun has systems within systems. And I think that's one of the most challenging things about this game. So I'm going to flip through it a little bit and kind of discuss what I think about it. I'm not going to go into much detail about the actual physical things of the game. Like I said, I'm not a big genius about the meta plot, so I'm not going to get into that much. But I am going to talk a couple things about it. So should you want to get into 3rd edition, you're going to have to read a bunch about, obviously, the meta plot to help you get into the feel for Shadowrun. Now, why did I pick Shadowrun? So back in the day, I thought that this was just elves and dwarves. This was D&D in cyberpunk, and that's all I really thought about it. And I didn't give it much weight, and I was probably pretty wrong about it. So in hindsight, it was a mistake to think about that, to think about the game in that light. So I had Cyberpunk. Cyberpunk was actually one of the very first. It was the first role-playing game I actually bought with my own money. I had the box set. I thought it was pretty cool. I never played it. After all these years, I never actually played one session of it. But I read it a bunch, and I thought it was really cool. And then now, when choosing, I said, you know what, I'm going to choose like a cyberpunk type game. I went with Shadowrun, and the reason I did that is because, actually, of the dwarves and the elves and trolls and stuff like that, and the kind of the fantasy aspect of it. I see it as it's a way to have a lot more story instead of just doing normal runs, shadow runs, companies, corporations, cybernetics. Like, say we're all human and we're playing cyberpunk. That's all well and good, but I think it's really neat that Shadowrun has that whole other layer of fantasy involved in it, and allows you to have a lot of different type of missions to go on and a lot of different type of stories to be told. So that's why I picked Shadowrun, and of course I picked Shadowrun 3rd edition because it was supposedly the best. Now I know a lot of people like 2nd edition. That's all well and good, but this is the one I went with, so that's the one I'm talking about. So first things first is it's a good sized book, obviously. This one's got a little bit of wear on it, but one thing you're gonna have to know, I did patch up this corner that was ripped just so it wouldn't get worse, but is that this book they're all prone to pages coming out of them, and that sucks, obviously. And that's why I'd love for them to do a print-on-demand version of it, but catalysts are not too smart. Now I have a couple versions of this book. This is the last, well, it's the last, the Fan Pro took it over from FASA, and this has got a lot more of fixed errata to it. So what I would tell you to do if you want to pick this book up is to look for, right here, this is the corrected 13th printing, 4th printing by Fantasy Productions 2004. Try to get the most recent printing of this book, because this book had a ton of errata throughout the years and different printings and editions and stuff. Well, not editions, just printings. So try to get the one that's as most as you can, okay? That's the first thing to start off with. And of course, it's going to go right into the basic story of what's happening. Now, this is all well and good, and you're going to have corporations, you're going to have the fantasy, you're going to have the native Indian tribes and the situation that happened there, the goblinization, where people all of a sudden became trolls and orcs and elves and dwarves and stuff. And there's a lot to read about. There's some cool fiction, and there's a lot of it, obviously, to get you up to speed with what's going on with the different years. There's some interesting stuff in there that I think you'll look back. I didn't even know that this was in here. Wow, I guess I never turned to this page. Who knows? You never know. This is a used book I got on eBay, and I'm almost certain I looked at this page. You know what? I looked at a different book, one of my different other editions, my other printings. And so this is a little cool thing here. I don't know who put that in there, but hey, we both kind of neat little thing to find. So, you know, again, this section's pretty big. It's going to tell you, it's going to, like I said, it's going to get you up to speed with what's going on, and you're going to have to really delve yourself into that. And then it's going to go into your core concepts. This is a D6 dice pool game, and I think the book is written overall fairly well. There are a couple little things here and there that might be a little bit hard to understand, or could be a little bit more clear. There's a lot of examples, but it's a book where you're going to want to read this so many times. If you're completely new to Shadowrun, of course. I'm not talking to you Shadowrun 2nd Edition big fans, because I know you're out there. You're going to have to read this a bunch to really absorb what's going on with it. It has what I believe to be, as a new player to Shadowrun, a cool way of making your character called the priority system. And of course, they made a different point buy system, point purchasing system, which people prefer. I understand that. But I'm using the priority system. I'm using it straight off the way that it's written. A lot of the art in this edition is good. I know there's some better, people prefer 2nd edition's art overall. There's still some good pieces. It doesn't blow my mind, like, overall. I mean, there's some good ones. This artist here, Prescott, is very good. I like his stuff a lot. And then here's that master character creation table with the priorities. Pretty much you set a priority, A, B, C, D, and E, and then you have to assign one of those priorities to either your race, your magic, your attributes, your skills, or your resources. And I think it's just a different way to create a character than I'm used to. There's tons of skills. You can do specializations. It kind of reminds me just a little bit of course, like a vampire and of D6 Star Wars. And, you know, it's all fairly well and good. Some of the placement of some of this stuff is a little goofy. There's these colored pieces here that are really nice, that have some kind of like pre-generated characters, but not all their stats are here, not all their equipment and stuff. You're going to find these same characters again on the back, but without all this, but with some of their other stuff. So it's like a weird melange of, like, you need this page and the other page if you want to use a pre-generated character. So I don't care for that at all. In the PDF, I was able to move these around and put them where I want them. I put these pictures back in the back where the stats are for the character, well, the other stats for the character. But excellent artwork here all around. I really like these pieces. It's different, and I dig it. I think it's really good. And you can use these characters. Actually, the players that I'm playing with, they're using these characters in the missions that I'm running for them. So you've got repair skills, you've got knowledge skills. I mean, there's tons of skills, so you're going to have to really, delve into that. But the one thing is going to be the combat. So you've got a dice pool with D6. One thing it does that's really cool is it has a combat pool, and this is the thing that I think is the biggest draw for players. is that they're going to have a certain amount of extra dice, D6s, that they can choose to add into their attacks or their defenses for a lot of the different stuff that their characters do. If they're a mage, if they're a hacker, a decker, as they call it, a rigger, who is someone that uses like drones and vehicles, you're going to use those extra dice to do either things offensively or defensively. And every single round they refresh, and so the players are going to have to decide how many of those dice they want to allocate to maybe their attack, or maybe wait and see if they're going to get killed by guns or spells or stuff like that. And so you have to kind of be a little bit smart each round. And I think it's really neat to have those D6, that combat pool. I'm using the combat pool. There's other pools, but that's the one I'm just going to reference. So you have those with you, and they refresh every turn. You say, okay, I've got 6, I'm going to use like maybe 3 for offense, and then I'll hold on to 3 in case I need to use them for defense. That might have been a bad choice. It's something that you're going to have to individually choose as a player. But the thing that's interesting is that me as the game master, I also have to do the same thing with the characters that I'm running, the NPCs that I'm running against the player group. And honestly, it's an interesting thing where I'm like, did I go overboard here? Did I make the right decision in giving this grunt, even though he's got combat dice, such a strong attack? So it's interesting that what you would think would be a mook enemy for the players and the characters could all of a sudden do a really strong attack because I decided to give them these dice. And so it's something you've got to get used to, and balancing yourself, whether or not you want to go all out in this scenario, this encounter with your enemies, whenever you're running this game. It's something I'm getting used to right now, and it's awkward. It's different. I'm out of my, my comfort zone with that. And then, we did the fast food adventure, or mission, I guess I should say, and 2 of the characters went down, and I'm sitting there thinking, well, was I too aggressive in this sense? Because I used their dice in a certain way, and the dice just happened to roll in a way that was detrimental to them. And so things can really change based off how they use their dice, their combat dice, and how I use my combat dice. And it's something just to let you know that you'll think about after and be like, wow, I don't know what to do. Because I usually, you got D&D, you've got your monster, they've got a hit bonus, and then you've got, maybe some abilities that they have, and sure, you'll spring an ability on them every once in a while, or whatever the case may be. There's nothing that can drastically all of a sudden change the probability of that hit. And I'm certain there's games that probably have this too, and I'm just speaking from my experience with this game here. But, so it's very different. It's very different to kind of gauge what you should do, but it should at least make for the players each combat turn something kind of exciting. And maybe they might have made a bad choice and they should hold back some dice for defense, or, whatever the case may be. I think a lot of times the players want to use a lot of offensive dice, and that comes back to kind of haunt them sometimes when I get good dice rolls. So the movement in the game is very interesting. Here's it's talking about these dice pools and the combat phase. You have to understand how it kind of goes, and you can have multiple, depending on how fast your initiative is, you can have multiple times to act within a turn. And a lot of characters with cybernetics are going to go much faster than player characters that don't have any. And that could have them getting absolutely wrecked because they just are not moving fast enough. There's a bunch of different type of like free actions. So you've got free actions, you've got simple actions, and you've got complex actions. So you can do 2 simple actions or 1 complex action. So you have to kind of know all these things and which one falls where. That's fairly standard for a game of this type. The movement was very interesting in the game. It becomes very ticky-tack where you can only move a certain amount of meters, and of course this is in meters to make it a little bit more difficult. But use something that, for people in the US, they'll be able to get used to over time. If you play it on like a board, it becomes very kind of, it becomes very strange when all of a sudden you're just kind of barely moving because you don't have a very large move rate and you didn't roll great on initiative. And then someone with cybernetics is just kind of zooming around the board that you're using. And so I would advise you not to use that. Don't be beholden to a board and maybe miniatures or drawing out and saying this is exactly 6 meters, so this is how far you're moving, and then this is how far you're moving. It just have it so that the characters, they move to where you want them to when you want them to move. So you'll say you'll get there in a turn, you'll get there in 2 turns, or you can get there in this turn and you can act. Make it a little bit more abstract. I think that's where this game bogs down a little bit, is in that movement. And while there is stuff that affects it, like in the rules, and I'm not much one for making my own rules for games, but it was a detriment, is to maybe look at that and be a little bit more lenient about that, because you'll see how you'll get into much minutia about where you're moving. And so there's a bunch of situational maneuvers and stuff, and target modifiers and stuff like that affects combat. This is a very, very crunchy game. Again, in my opinion. There's going to be someone out there that says it's not, but whatever. This is what I think. I think it's a very crunchy game, and I also think it's a very crunchy game for the year 2022. You know, I've been playing a lot of easy games, a lot of really laid-back games that, you know, I don't even roll as a DM or a game master. They don't have all this stuff. And of course, when you're dealing with guns, lots of times you either have to go somewhat complex or very abstract. And there doesn't ever seem to be a really great middle area. I'm certain there's a role-playing game out there that has it. But for this one, there's a lot of stuff. You have to deal with the recoil. You have to deal with, of course, what type fire rate, the bane of all guns in role-playing games, of spraying down, automatic fire, burst fire, and stuff like that, how it affects you. How to change from multiple targets. Oh, they've been a headache for me in other games for years. This one does what it does. It seems all right. You can see here's the big modifier table for ranged, visibility and stuff like that. So you make an attack roll. They decide if they want to dodge, and they can only use their combat dice. And then they keep whatever dice they've made with that dodge roll. If they made more than the attack roll, then they dodge it all together. If they didn't, those dodge dice go and help add into the damage resistance test. So they got hit, so whatever successes you get from there, they are added with the dodge test, and then you determine the outcome, and it involves staging damage up and down for every 2 successes, either for the attacker or for the defender. And as a defender, you're trying to lower that so where it goes away, so you don't have any damage. And as someone attacking, you're trying to raise that up. So it's just different. You know, it's a different system. It's one that when you read, you're either going to be like, wow, I'm really, really, this is really perplexed by how this thing works. Or you're going to be like, well, I like crunchy games, and I'm going to definitely delve into it, and I think you'll enjoy that aspect of it. So again, single shot mode, semi-automatic mode, burst fire mode, short burst, full auto mode. I mean, this is a lot of game, and this is just in the main section of combat. Okay, so I'm going to jump around a little bit. You've got melee combat, of course. You've got a condition monitor, very much as like Vampire, where as you take on boxes, you get negatives to your rolls. Damage healing is a little strange, how that kind of works over time. You make some certain rolls, body rolls, to lessen the time that it takes you to heal, so on and so forth. Healing yourself, and now here comes the section, vehicles and drones. This is a whole section. I'm not really sure why it's right here, and it's about, man, I don't even know here. I think we're getting almost to the end of it. Here we go. So there is from 130 to 158. So we're talking about 28 pages of vehicles and drones, and this is like its own different system. And that's where this game becomes, it can really bog you down. So you don't want to sit there and tell somebody, no, I'm not ready to learn the system of being one of the riggers to do drones and vehicles. And so that kind of sucks. It's kind of like you feel like you're pulling back something that the player wants to play as. But I would tell you what to do is, and I'm still working with it myself, you've got to learn all these things kind of by themselves and then try to absorb them into your game. So don't just jump straight in with hacking and vehicles and magic. Unless, this is speaking for I think most game masters, this thing will bog you down in a heartbeat, because this is its own system all to itself. And I know that Shadowrun has dealt with trying to minimize and solidify and all these different type of systems, and that's how we've got the newer editions. But for this one, this is a lot of work to understand. And the game is very thorough in a lot of the stuff it does. So all this stuff here is about the sensors of your vehicle or your drones, even how much energy that they produce, the power that they're able to output. You have to come up with this big like maneuver and combat dice. You add in all these modifiers, and that's going to give you a certain amount of a total that you're finally going to be able to roll. So it's a lot of keeping up with. Whoever plays the rigger, they need to absorb this themselves. You read it over as a game master and try to absorb as much as you can, but if they want to play a rigger, they need to understand how the rigger works, because it's only going to bog you down. You can't stop this game because somebody else wants to do something and they haven't learned it. We all know how that is in role-playing games, especially today. But this is something, if they want to learn how to play, if they want to play a rigger, they need to learn it, and they almost need to teach you as the game master how it runs. That's my opinion, to make it go smooth. And then the same thing, I would say lesser fact though, is the magic. Magic is like its own other system. Now it's not, I don't think it's as complicated as the rigger system, but there's a lot to it. You've got shamans, and you've got the hermetic, like mage type wizards, magic users, and they're a little bit different. And you've got, what you're going to have to learn here is exactly how the spells go. They have a lot of control over the spells. There's not a whole bunch of them, especially offensive spells, but they can decide how strong it is, because they have to make a drain test. It'll do damage to them if they fail their drain roll and their drain resistance roll. And so they get to decide how strong it is. Obviously, the stronger the spell, the more their drain's going to be, and they're going to have to roll really good for that. So spellcasters have a lot of choice when it comes to how powerful their spells are and how many they cast. And where it gets bogged down here is going to be in spirits, understanding the way that spirits work, what you can do with them. There's also these guys here, the Adepts. They pretty much use magic in their body, and they're actually easy because they're pretty much just abilities that you pay for, and you become pretty much like I don't want to say a Jedi, but like it's all inside. It's all inside you. Improved abilities, improved boosts, body control, fairly easy to do. So then in the mages, they've got the Astral Plane. You've got to understand about that, how that all works. Sensing stuff, projecting, perceptive, how perceptive you are in the Astral Plane and what you can do with that. And here's, of course, a depiction of it there. Some cool colored picture, things here that they put in the middle of the book. And then like tracking, like astral tracking. And then you get into the meat of it, the sorcery, and that's where it's going to tell you how you have to do your sorcery test. And again, you have sorcery pool dice that you can add to your sorcery test. This game is crunchy. It's got a lot to it. The conjuring, how to deal with spirits, what they can do for you, their domains, the services they can give you, and how they can aid you, how you can summon elementals and bind them. It's a lot. So whoever wants to play the mage, again, you tell them like the rigger player, you've got to learn this. Now, I think the game master should learn a good bit about this, especially about how combat works. Magical items, how they use. The focuses. They're magical items that pretty much they help you improve your ways of casting spells. Have the magic user player really delve into this section and almost teach you that section. And then here's the spells with what their target is and how much drain they do. And again, the magic user is going to have that power. And then we have the matrix where the deckers come into play. This is really complicated in my opinion. And I don't have anybody playing a decker in my game, but it's something, at least it's there. But it is so in depth. Look at this with the different type of like hosts and grids, different type of cyber decks and what they can do. The different stats of a cyber deck. Your hacking pool. It's its own. You could have a complete Shadowrun game in the Matrix, just with Decker characters, dealing with ice and suppressing stuff, triggering host grids, all these different type of like, what are these things called? Geez, my mind's gone blank here. There's so much to cover. This is these are the operations that you can do. It's very complex. And so I would say to anybody, know what you're getting into with this game. I looked into it, I did my work. But once you got it in front of you and you're trying to, understand it all, it's a real deep game when it comes to this stuff. Then there's a section here about kind of running the shadows, loot. These are easier sections to understand. About experience and karma, how that all works. karma pools, kind of like get out of jail cards, get out of death, in essence. How to deal with NPCs and contacts. Not too bad. Spirits and dragons, a whole other section that's interesting, but again, very powerful beings and deity type creatures. And then you're going to want to go into the gear, and it's got a lot. And it's going to have local fines and punishments and stuff for carrying them, whether or not you're able to actually wear them or not without them being illegal. I do like the conceal. Pretty much it tells you how easy it is to conceal a weapon. Like this Walther palm pistol has got 9 conceal, meaning that the target number is 9 to see if you've got that person has that on their person, that gun. That's very cool. Obviously, a huge rifle is going to be like a 2. It's hard to hide a rifle. So then they thought about a lot of stuff in the game. There is some stuff that they just completely missed. And then we go into this huge section of pretty much other stuff between armor and electronics and the stuff you need to do all the stuff you want to do for being like a rigger or a decker. And it's a ton. Data encryption, security devices, skill softs and chips that you can put into your cyberware. All this information here about cybernetics, which I think I dig. And of course, for all these things, magic, decking, the rigger, cybernetics, there's other books that fluff it up even more with more stuff and more choices and different ways of doing it. So it's just a huge, huge game, I think, in this book. You get a lot of it. Look at this bodywear. Of course, it's got cybernetics, so there's got a lot of choices in it. So this is pretty much an all-you-can-eat package here. Biotech, cyberdecks, programs, magical equipment, and then vehicles. And then in the back, there's a little bit about kind of the current state of certain places and the factions that are going on, some of the businesses and gangs. And, that's one aspect of Shadowrun that I think if you don't focus on that, and that's, you're missing out on a lot of what Shadowrun's about. But honestly, there's already so much to learn when trying to play the game. This is going to come in time. There's a lot of novels you can read about Shadowrun that might help you understand. But this on its own, to learn about all the politics and the back and forth of companies and the business dealings, is a huge other aspect of the game. So almost every single thing you tackle. See, this is that section showing you up here, in the front here with those colored characters. This is the rest of the character sheet. So it's a bad layout in my opinion. And then it does have, thank God, an index and a character sheet. So the game is very interesting in that it's a beast. There's a lot to it. Every single aspect of it when it comes to the certain type of character types. The decker, the mage, the rigger, the guy who likes a lot of cybernetics, the combat by itself, the choices you have in combat, the different actions. It's a lot of game. And anybody out there that's looking to get an old version of Shadowrun, I would tell you to get 3rd edition. Someone else is probably going to tell you to play 2nd. They cleared up a lot of stuff in 3rd. I know a lot of the books, some of the adventures and some of the add-on type books are really good in 2nd edition, and you can use those with it as well. But this game is going to test you. In 2022, my opinion is this is going to test you, especially if you've been playing a lot of easier games, such as I have. You are going to have to go back in your mind to those days where you didn't have a bunch of things that were taking your attention and really absorb what's in this book. I think if you want to run this game well, you can fail on so many different levels. And you don't want to sit here in the middle of the game referencing this as much all the time. Now, you're going to, that's for sure. But definitely try to cut out the decker right off the bat, because that's something that is just so alien to the rest of what you're doing in the game. Now, they're very helpful, but it's for you starting out. If you're like me, I'm not touching it. And I've got a player that's playing a mage, and that's going fairly well. We've not delved into any spirits or anything like that, and for right now, thank God. Another character is he's got a rigger, and I'm learning the vehicle section and how all that works, and I hope he is too, because this is definitely a mutual game. This is not one of these games nowadays in a group that's probably many groups out there where the players show up and they want to be entertained by the DM or the GM or whatever, and they don't have to do a lot of work. No. In my opinion, the game master in this needs help, a lot of it. The rigger character take care of the rigger stuff, the mages take care of their stuff, and oh my gosh, if you've got a decker, talk about that. Talk about that and tell your players, guys, I need help. Please don't play a decker right off the bat. Let us all learn it first, and then we can slowly get into the decker. But I do like this. I like the book. I like a lot of the books that I've looked, that I've picked up for the 3rd edition. I've got some 2nd edition stuff too. And this 3rd edition to 4th edition is kind of a bit of a cutoff period where I think in 4th edition a lot of stuff kind of changed. And this still captures the same type of rule set that the 1st and 2nd editions did. So that's why I would tell you, if you want to get one of the older editions, 2nd or 3rd I think will be fine for you. I'm not sure there's much love for 1st edition just because there was a lot of issues with it. But this game's got a lot of errata. Try to get the highest printing that you can possibly get. Take your time with it. You're going to need to read it a lot. Try to absorb yourself in the story that's going on in Shadowrun. And then take each one of those sections piece by piece. Get help from your players. You must get help, I feel. Because unless you are a super genius, then of course disregard this altogether. But these things will bog your game down massively. Just the combat can get out of hand. Guns are very deadly. You'll learn, oof, that guy just went down in a couple bullets there. And now the ending of this mission is up in the air. So you've got to learn how to use your combat pool when you're running this against players with your enemies. They have to learn it too. So this is just a mutual crunchy game for 2022 and beyond. Not everybody's going to like it. A lot of people would look at those rules and just absolutely balk at it. I completely understand. And if my players say this is too much for them, that's fine. This is an undertaking for everyone. And hopefully everyone can step to the plate and try to make it as best as possible. So on top of trying to role play people in the future, in the year 2060 or 2061, when the meta plot kind of advanced forward, trying to role play like that, get the characters in the right mindset. They've got all these other things they've got to try to grasp onto with the combat system and these other different systems, which I'm telling you, as you can see, they are completely different in the way that they are, the way they run. The Decker especially. It's a completely different system that's in this book. So a little bit different. I didn't want to really break down everything about it. But I was like, if I'm going to do a video about Shadowrun 3rd Edition, I'm not going to just tell you that, hey, it's a great game. I'm going to tell you, whoa, look out. This thing's a beast. And it might challenge you. It definitely, I think, will. And there's a lot of different things going on in it, in combat, and the system itself, and then in those other aspects of the game. So I hope this has been beneficial for anyone wanting to look into 3rd Edition. Or Shadowrun just in general. Like I said, I can't speak for some of the newer editions. They may be easier. I don't know. I've heard they're a bit of a quagmire, but to each their own. I do know that Catalyst has a lot of errata and just issues straight out the gate with 6th edition. And they've been pumping out a ton of stuff, almost just trying to just pile on so it'll just go on to the pile of the other books, and you'll just keep buying their stuff. But I do like this one. I do think it's a cool edition to get. The art is not fantastic all the way through. It's got a couple pieces, but nothing that really is amazing. But there's a lot to say about this game. There's a lot of adventures, and I say adventures, but missions and really cool world you can create with Shadowrun. And of course, using their Seattle location mainly. And of course, it branches out to all sorts of other places. So it's I didn't give it much look back in the day. But what I didn't know is that through all those years, these guys were making a huge game with a lot of content, a lot of products, some of them good, some of them bad, and really doing their own thing out there, while other games were pushing forward. So there it is. I know this has been long, But this is a word of caution, you know, is what I'm hoping this video is going to be. And to let you know what you're getting into, should you want to delve into it, much the way that I have. Because honestly, several times I've just been absolutely just kind of like, whoa, I've really gotten over my head a little bit here. And I've got to kind of take my time and keep reading it over and over again. Because if somebody can absorb all this book, and they need to be working, like making rockets or something, or spaceships, or I don't know, something. Because this thing is deep. So there it is, Shadowrun 3rd edition. I hope this video has been helpful. PDF is definitely available on ttrpg. I appreciate all the new people that have subscribed to my videos, you know, subscribed to my channel. And yeah, if anybody out there has played 3rd edition, has the same kind of reaction to Shadowrun, I'd like to know about it, or if they have any tips or tricks or anything to help you, to help other people and myself into how to play this game. I'd love to hear it. You know, leave a comment down below, and do all that stuff that helps the algorithm for the channel so that more people can see it. I can't wait to hopefully maybe get to 1,000 subscribers. I think that would be cool. But there it is, Shadowrun 3rd edition. It's something that I know that is a lot of work for my players and for myself, but if we can pull it off, I think we'll have a lot of fun, and I think you will too if you want to check out the game. So there it is, Shadowrun. Thanks a lot.